Hi, this is my presentation. It's called Perfectly Natural. Today I want to talk about something that many of us deal with almost every day, especially during the summer, weeds and bugs. Now, if you're a gardener, these things can drive you crazy. And you might be using pesticides and herbicides to solve this problem because, let's face it, they work. You spray the plant and an hour later it's gone. You spray the bug and it dies. But what many of us may not realize is that there are some serious consequences to using pesticides and herbicides. In fact, I would liken them to chemical warfare. One of the major problems for starters is pollution. You may not know this, but over 5 billion pounds of pesticides are used every year in the United States. And of these 5 billion pounds of pesticides, only 0.01 has been traced to actually killing the pests. That means 99.9% of those pesticides are going out into our air, the water, and our soil. And that's not good. Another problem with pesticides and herbicides is that they are poison, and as such, they can kill people. One sad example of this is Agent Orange that was used in Vietnam. While Agent Orange didn't immediately kill people that it came in contact with, it led to deaths later on because women and men who were exposed to this, later on when they tried to have children, women found that they just would miscarry over and over. And not only that, if they did have children, often those children were horribly deformed and they wouldn't live past the age of 20. This was a horrible, horrible consequence of using that herbicide. Another big consequence is the loss of bees that we're facing. Now, you may not think bees are as serious as what happened in Vietnam, but since 1949, we've lost about half of the world's bee population. Scientists are calling this colony collapse disorder. And this is a big problem because bees pollinate over 100 vital crops that we eat. In the United States alone, the work that bees do on pollination amounts to about $14 billion. In places like China, where the bee population has dropped even more drastically, they're now having to go around to orchards and actually pollinate by hand. This is very difficult to do, and as you can imagine, it's not great for the economy. So, what do we do about pesticides and herbicides? Well, there's a lot that we can do and have done. For instance, we've restricted the use of chemical weapons in war, and that's a really good thing. Another thing is that we've created more regulations for farmers, when they can spray and how much they can spray. That's also a really good thing. Also, we've done some research on alternative crops and natural enemies for pests. Also, really good things. But one area where we're still falling short is educating suburban residents. As Scott Hoffman Black, the president of the Xerces Conservation Society, has said, more pesticides are used on urban landscapes than in agricultural areas. And as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, what is a weed? A plant whose virtues have never been discovered. The fact of the matter is, we don't understand often just how valuable some of the plants that we're getting rid of can be. Let me give you an example. If we make 3 simple shifts overall in our thinking, lawn care, pest control, and food choices, we can really make a difference in pesticide and herbicide use in our local communities. So first let's start off with lawn care. If you look at this picture, you see a house and you see a beautiful lawn. But if you're a honeybee and you're looking at this picture, what you see is a desert. There is nothing there for you to eat. Now, if a person sees a dandelion in this beautiful lawn, they might think, oh no, that's horrible, there's a weed, gotta get rid of it, right? But if a bee sees that same dandelion in the lawn, they think, oh, an oasis, some place that I can go to eat. Dandelions are one of those weeds that is very, very misunderstood. Not only is it edible for bees, it's also edible for people. Now, I understand that not everybody wants to let dandelions grow in their lawn because, let's face it, they can get out of control. But one thing you might consider letting grow in your lawn is clover. Not only does it blend in with the grass, but it also competes with other weeds. And it creates nice little flowers that bees can come along and eat. Clover is a great solution that is easy to take care of and honestly is great for the environment. Now, the second one that we need to look at is pest control. Just like dandelions, I realize that people do not want to see bugs on their favorite flowers and on the food that they grow in their garden. But did you know that you don't have to buy pesticides or herbicides to get rid of them? For instance, if you have aphids growing or crawling all over your flowers, you can get rid of them with soapy water. It doesn't hurt the bees at all. You can also get rid of slugs in your yard by putting some beer in a little empty tuna fish can, leaving it out. The slugs will just crawl right in there and drown. So that's another easy way to get rid of pests in your yard. There are also many, many others. And the great things about them are is they're not poisonous and they're actually a lot cheaper than pesticides and herbicides. Last but not least, food choices. Now I understand that people want their food to look good, but we have to remember that apple in Snow White. It was a beautiful apple, but it was also poisonous. Using pesticides and herbicides on plants does improve the quality usually and the appearance of those apples or oranges or anything else, but it also causes other problems. We have basically poison and the residue of poison on our food. One sad example of this that really just doesn't even make sense to me, it happens in the orchards in Florida every year. Growers typically spray every year because there's a tiny little red rust fungus that grows on the outside of orange peel. Now, not only do we usually peel oranges, we don't usually eat the peel, but even if we did ingest that little red fungus, it actually is completely harmless. So why don't we eat fruit with little tiny defects in it? Or why don't we just cut those defects off instead of exposing ourselves to poisons? Something to think about. Overall, I think the main message for me is that instead of trying to make nature perfect, we need to learn to be happy with being perfectly natural. And most of all, we need to remember it's not just for the bees. It's for our future, and it's for all of us. Thank you for listening.